Oh. What's the best way to avoid getting Lyme disease?
You have to be vigilant. The best way to avoid it is to stay inside, but that is not practical. One study showed in Holland that people were most frequently infected in their backyards, and that probably happens here to a large degree. So what I recommend is if you want to go hiking or walking in a field or what have you, stay away from tall grass. Do not go near tall grass. Don't even brush up against it. Permethrin impregnated clothing is very effective in killing ticks and in protecting yourself. You can buy permethrin and douse your clothing yourself, or you can buy it, buy the clothing that's been impregnated. But you don't have to do everything. There was a study of people who just had their socks and shoes doused with permethrin, and you don't use it every single time. It's not like a repellent. You can wash the clothes and so on several times. But this study showed that there was a 75-fold decrease in tick bites in this group that had just protection of their socks and shoes.
How are you spelling that?
Permethrin. Permethrin, and it is a derivative of, a synthetic derivative of chrysanthemum flowers. It has been used in the military for several decades on soldiers who wear these clothes 24/7, all day long anyway.
So, yeah. Oh, can I ask you a question? Yes, I have a question on what you feel about Lyme disease and cancer in general, or breast cancer. There was a TED Talk about a year ago I saw online, and I forgot the doctor's name, that made the assimilation that he claims that every woman that has breast cancer also has Lyme disease. But that if you, like what he also said, what you said, if you get tested because you have breast cancer for Lyme disease, it might not come up positive because the test is not good enough.
I have not heard of a connection to Lyme disease, but there is significant research going on about a possible connection between breast cancer and Bartonella. And Bartonella is another organism which we believe is transmitted by ticks, but the deal hasn't been sealed in terms of proving that. It's been found in ticks, but it's also ubiquitous. It's cat scratch fever. When you get scratched by a cat, you can get the Bartonella organism, introduced into your bloodstream. But yeah, there does seem to be a very clear link between Bartonella. So if you got scratched by a cat or bitten by a tick you have a higher risk. That research is in its infancy, but it's really good research. It's going on at Duke University.
Lyme disease, and I want to share something. My doctor told me that the tests are very unreliable because the spirochete is not always in the bloodstream, that it migrates, and if it's not in the bloodstream at the time of the testing, it will not reveal that it's there. And I also want to ask you about squirrels. Can squirrels carry the tick?
They're not squirrels aren't, to take that one first, a big reservoir here in the east. They are the prime reservoir in the west of Lyme disease, where there's a different species of tick, but yes, they're not a huge reservoir here. As far as the spirochete does quickly leave the bloodstream, and it disseminates throughout the body, which is, you really don't want that to happen. But that's not really why the test doesn't work, because the test relies on your immune system to produce antibodies in response to the spirochete. And it takes a period of time for you to do that. But moreover, there is research showing, particularly in monkeys, that we have animals that we know, without a doubt, have been infected with Lyme disease. Infected ticks have been put on them, more than one. They've tested, these monkeys, and they cannot muster, in some cases, the antibody response. And that's what we think may be happening in some people. They just can't produce the antibodies. We don't really know why, but it's a reality, and we know that people with Lyme disease are not testing positive. This is just a bad test, and it will be replaced in the coming years. Everybody, even the mainstream side, recognizes it's a bad test.
This is two-part. I was wondering if there was any correlation in data with the work that Willy Bergdorfer and his colleagues that were discussed by Kim,
Chris Newby.
Yes, Chris Newby. In the 50s, 60s, 70s, when they were stuffing ticks and releasing them, en masse, was there any order of magnitude showing up in the populations of ticks that correlated with that? And the second part is any of the research that Chris Smith has been doing, the senator, on following up. Is there, some validity that the government actually did this?
So, the question is whether biowarfare experiments involving ticks might have led to this epidemic of Lyme disease. Because of Plum Island, which is was a biowarfare testing laboratory, is right off the coast of Long Island and pretty close to kind of the epicenter in the United States of Lyme disease. Chris Newby's book has really done a great job in raising questions about what the U.S. government did with and to ticks. They definitely put things into ticks. They experimented with pathogens to see if they could infect the ticks and what would happen as a result. Now, they didn't let those ticks loose. They just, did their thing in terms of experiments. So, I think there's a lot of questions. What happened, and maybe some sloppy work went on. I don't know. Plum Island doesn't have the best reputation in terms of controls. Other people have written about that. But it doesn't really explain why there's a huge epidemic worldwide. Why, Eastern Europe is another epicenter of Lyme disease and tick-borne illness. Why it's global. Birds travel only so far. But it emerged there in Europe about the same time it was emerging here in the United States. So it raises questions, but I don't think it explains this entire epidemic. I know Chris, as a result, Chris Smith, the congressman, has sought to, have the Pentagon answer some questions, but I don't know really where that stands.
Do you know the best way to protect your dog from Lyme's disease?
Yes, well, I have a dog. We have many family dogs, and we get them vaccinated. We use the Seresto collar. I've used the front line and the other things that you apply to the back of their heads. I think they're pretty effective, but I still have to, pick ticks off of my dog. The dog still gets bitten, but the tick dies, which makes me a little uncomfortable because who knows what he's being exposed to. We have better controls and preventatives for our animals than we do for our children, and that's not good.
Thank you. This was...
I think that was the last question, and I will be
Please,
out.
please, one question. How can you find a Lyme literate doctor? I have a loved one that was tested a dozen times here. Finally, blood work sent to California, tested positive. To try to convince these doctors to get any treatment it's difficult. So how right now, I think there must be a lot of people that are being told they have different illnesses or they're searching for answers because there don't seem to be Lyme specialists right here on Long Island. Can you help with that?
There's not many Lyme literate doctors. There's not enough of them, let's say. If you want referrals, go to the, plug into the group on Facebook. There's about 100 of them. Support groups, there's a lot of support groups around. But, what you're going to find is that, A, there's a shortage of these doctors, a shortage of doctors who are willing to learn about Lyme disease. Many of them are afraid of it because of licensing boards, but you're also going to find that they cost a lot of money. And this is an unfortunate situation. Some say that they're really cashing in on the misery of many people. But on the other hand, they practice a different kind of medicine. They usually, take maybe 2 hours for an intake. They look at the person from top to bottom. They, do things like test for heavy metals and hormones and how's your thyroid working and all sorts of things. They practice a form of medicine that more doctors should practice, but that is very, very expensive. The other thing is they don't take insurance because they don't want to be flagged by the insurance companies as putting in claims for treating Lyme, extensively, because the suspicion is that those doctors that were under investigation had been reported by insurance companies. Thank you very much. I will be out here, and I'd be more than willing